Okay, hello everyone. Probably gonna be a few new people to this channel who haven't seen my videos before that are gonna be watching this video. All of you, of course, are gonna dislike it. No. So I'm a really big strongman fan. Didn't grow up with a whole lot of sports in my life, but I did lock on to strongman. I've been a fan for about 15 or so years now. So, a few disclaimers out of the way before we, as the title suggests, rank all the world's strongest men winners from the time that I started, 1977, until the present day, as of this recording, 2023. One of them is I didn't see any such rankings on YouTube. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't. It's like my channel, what's so hidden that even if you search for it, you can't find it, so, who knows. There might be one out there. Another one is, just as a heads up, obviously, I feel it needs to be, doesn't need to, shouldn't have to be said, but I guess it needs to be said. It's not a definitive list, okay? I don't know if I'm definitive, have a definitive, on anything, really. And especially something like this, right? With other sports, you can be, a little bit more definitive, maybe. Again, I'm not a huge sports person with a lot of numbers, whereas with strongman, there's a lot of other factors, which is kind of part of the entertainment value, like whether they're on sand versus, a hard floor, what the weather was like, what the pressure might be like, what the temperature might be like in the indoors versus outdoors in terms of how that, affects the stickiness of the tacky and other things. So there's so many factors that you can obviously discuss. But that being said, it's not, a definitive list, it's just my list. That being said, I am, for the sake of this list, weighting World's Strongest Man wins a little heavier. Now, I know that may be a bit controversial, especially as of recent, where there's a big controversy with, how heavy is actually World's Strongest Man versus some of the other contemporary big shows such as Rogue Invitational, the Arnold Strongman, and the Shaw Classic, also known as the Strongest Man on Earth as of this year. So, again, not going to really address that. This is more in light of World's Strongest Man, but then there are other strongman competitions I take into account, and with varying degrees of weight. Literally and figuratively, but again, the World's Strongest Man wins will count a little disproportionately heavy towards the rankings. Another one is because I did become a fan in 2008-ish, 2009-ish. I'm pretty familiar with the strongman scene from that time forward. That being said, I'm not as familiar with the strongman scene before that. Now, there have been more recent videos over the past several years, which have come to light with those strongman competitions, which is nice to see them and review them. But that being said, there's still a lot of footage out there because it's not, again, still more of a newer sport. Where there's a lot of footage that's either lost or it's kind of, you have to kind of dig deep for it, and I may or may not have seen it. So that being said, I'm not super familiar with it. This just as a, disclaimer, Mariusz Pudzianowski got me into, the sport with his physique and with his domination. So anything previous to that in terms of his wins, so I'll be honest with you, Phil Pfister, Vassar Vorastik, and Sven Karlsson, and then before that, not quite as familiar with that era. Again, I have seen one of those World's Strongest Men, but they're not as ingrained in my psyche and memory as 2008 onward. So just a heads up on that. So if I get some things, pretty off the mark, disclaimer on that. Again, I'm not a definitive, review on this anyway. Another thing is. And this is what I really like about strongman, of one of the many things. There's just such camaraderie, and there's also, because of that, you want to see everyone, do well, right? And you hate to see when people get out. That's kind of a bit ancillary, but what I'm kind of getting to is, when I first went through this list, I kind of ranked everyone a little too high, because they're all winners, right? They're all winners, and kind of as the, tier suggests, there's no one that's bad here either. They're all, one, the World's Strongest Man, they're all extremely strong men, magnitude of dozens, if even more, stronger than I. weakling that I am. But that being said, you do need to, obviously, to make a proper tier list, you separate, parse them out based on each other, and of course there's a lot of factors that kind of go into that. So just a heads up, I did have to re-go through it and then kind of, push some guys down as much as I, wanted to put everyone, near the top or middle at least. So just a heads up with that. Final disclaimer, or not a disclaimer actually, but just a heads up as a kind of an interesting fact. Actually, interestingly enough, although this did start in 1977, as of the time of recording this video, all of them are still living. All 24 winners are still living, minus Don Reinhardt, rest in peace. So, that maybe says a lot for being healthy with the sport and, keeping your body healthy, even though there are a lot of injuries. So, with all those disclaimers out of the way, I think we are good to go ahead and get into it. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you are new to the channel, again, I typically do video game content, but this is kind of my segue into this. I really do love this sport. So, subscribe, like if you want to see some more content. I might do some more strongman stuff. But without further ado, let's hop into it. So, the first one's going to be Bruce Wilhelm. So, Bruce Wilhelm is primarily known as a powerlifter. He actually he only, I think, won basically the world's strongest man twice, and I think those were mostly his only competitions. Again, the farther back you go, there's not a whole lot of good information keeping, especially because a lot of these smaller competitions were like kind of in the backyard sort of thing. Now, obviously, World's Strongest Man wasn't, but it was very new to the sport, so I don't actually think he competed really in anything. However, because he was, the first in the OG, and he was also really, really good in powerlifting and some other things that include strength, I'll put him in the Alpha Strongman. Again, good to give it a little bit, kind of like the George Washington bias, right? Where they're the ones who started and pioneered it. They're going to be maybe a little bit more weight, in their favor. That being said, I'm actually going to, unfortunately, I'm going to go to this. Now this is what I'm going to start getting. The dislikes are going to start coming. John Reinhardt. I'm going to put him, because I had to, I think I originally had him in the B tier. I'm going to put him in the C tier, force to be reckoned with. Also a really great powerlifter. You'll notice that there's a common theme here. There's a lot of, good powerlifters that come over to the strongman arena. The thing is he wasn't really active that long as well. So if he had a longer career, then he probably would have done a lot better. I believe he had a career ending during injury in 1980, which prevented him from competing at the top level longer after that. So I'll put him there. Not a whole lot else to be said about him. He only won Worlds once, whereas Bruce Wilhelm won 2. He won in 1977, 1978, and then Don Reinhardt won in 1979. So the winner for the next 3 years in a row, and now this is where, if you have been paying to the sport of strongman even just for a few years, you're going to know this guy's name. It has Bill Kazmaier. Okay, so Bill Kazmaier, again, really great powerlifter, need to be said. The benching of over 600 pounds and just such a huge overall. He did hold the world record for overall, I think, in open powerlifting for, I want to say it was less than a year. It wasn't too long, but it kept on changing hands a little bit in that time period of the late 70s, early 80s to mid 80s. And obviously, as any good strongman historian would know, for some reason, he was so good that he was not invited back. He was so dominant that he was not invited back, and so he's one of the big, in terms of world's strongest man at least, wins, what ifs. If he had been invited back, how many would he have won? He won 3 in a row again, and then when he came back, he placed, I believe, second. I should have written that in my notes. He podiumed, I know. I think he placed second to Jeff Capes. But again, it would have been interesting to know if he had been invited back, how many he would have had. So he wasn't invited back until 1988. But for this reason, and because of all the other strength stuff he's done, I'm going to put him as a legend of the sport. He's still around, does a lot of commentating. But he's long since retired in terms of competing at the top level. But yeah, Monserva Man, really impressive to watch as well, and definitely one of the OG and one of the greats when you're talking about the sport of strongman. Definitely when you're thinking of some of the strongest men who have ever lived, especially in the lens of a strongman perspective, he's going to be one that's going to come across that discussion. So, next is Jeff Capes. He won twice in 1983 and 1985. So Jeff Capes hails from the United Kingdom, from the UK. He was a shot putter, I believe, and he was also 3 times Europe's strongest man. I know Europe's strongest man doesn't necessarily come up a whole lot in the older contestants discussions. It's more kind of a modern thing, I think, in the 2010s plus, but it was around back then even. So I'm gonna put Jeff Capes in the A tier. I think he was pretty good. He had an overall a solid run. Again, kind of one of the starting out pioneers of it, was pretty good. So yeah, I'm gonna put him in an alpha strongman. Again, he won 1983, 1985. But in between there was someone who came up, and he was had a rivalry between not only Capes but also Kazmaier. And this is John Paul Sigmarsson. Okay, so John Paul, 4 times world's strongest man, 4 times. So it's like, well, why was he invited back when Bill Kazmaier only won 3? And yeah, we politics and whatever, who knows, go on and on. But he won 4 times, tied with a few others for that number of titles. Really great personality. I unfortunately really should watch more with him, but I've seen some of the clips of him, what? Why should I be alive if I can't deadlift? No, why should I be alive if I can't watch him deadlift with the 1-arm 550-pound or so deadlift? So. Really legend in this strength sport. He also died really young. A lot of people may not realize, based on all his accomplishments, that he actually didn't compete for all that long, and he did pass away, unfortunately. He hadn't in his mid-30s yet. I think he was like 34 when he passed away. So, I'm very unfortunate. Huge powerhouse. I'm going to put him up here at legend of the sport. Really known for also being really entertaining to watch as well. So, he won 4 times again. He won in 1984, 1986, 1988, and 1990. So, actually, in 1987, it's the only year that the World's Strongest Man was not held. So, moving on to 1989, we have another newcomer, single winner. And this is Jamie Reeves right here, also from the UK. Jamie Reeves was 9 times Britain's strongest man. 9 times England's strongest man, 4 times Britain's strongest man. So really big in the UK scene there. But of course, UK really is kind of the progenitor, I think, of the World's Strongest Man, and kind of the flame holder of the contest. So gets a lot of attention, big name in that sector. But not a whole lot, I would say, outside of the World's Strongest Man, and then those Britain and England. So I'll put him in powerhouse. Solid overall, but not necessarily, up there with some of the greatest. Again, they're all great. What can I say? But, we've got to be a little bit more discerning than just saying, okay, everyone goes into at least the A tier, and then the few greats are in the S tier. Okay, so now we are on to yet another 4-time winner. So, unfortunately, sorry, sir, this was not the best picture. I like this picture, but I actually had to redo this tier list because they were all kind of showing up weird, and unfortunately, didn't get a good picture of his face. But Magnus Magnuson, another one that, some of the names exit the sports after, they are get their wins. He has not. He has stuck around. He does a little bit of commentating, but he's more known for judging right now, along with, head referee and all that good stuff, promoting and even hosting his own Magnus Magnuson Classic. So Magnus Magnuson, his was an interesting story because he actually started off as a reserve in the World's Strongest Man, and he won it. So he didn't just make the final; he won the whole thing. And we moved from one Icelandic 4-time winner to another 4-time Icelandic winner, Magnus Magnuson. Again, 4 times World's Strongest Man. He won in 1991, 94, 95, and 96. So he won 3 times in a row. So I'm going to put him up here at the S tier. Not the biggest guy in terms of being on the field, and but he had a lot of good power in him in terms of athleticism and all that explosiveness. So now we're going to go with a guy that is pretty uncommonly heard of. He stuck out to me because of one thing, and that's because of height. At 6'10.5", I believe he is, almost 6'11", very nearly 7 feet. Ted Van de Par, winner of the 1992 World's Strongest Man, hailing from the Netherlands, is currently the tallest World's Strongest Man winner. I'm going to put him down here because that's kind of the most remarkable thing about him. Obviously, these men, again, I have to say it so many times, are remarkable in many facets of strength, but in terms of when contrasting, comparing to each other, his height was one of the biggest things. Didn't really win a whole much outside of that, but yeah, so that's why I'm putting him down there. But he did win, obviously, World's Strongest Man. I'm saying, oh, they did, but yeah, and also the only Netherlands. No one else from the Netherlands has won. So. After that, in 1993, we also had another single winner. Now, this guy, unfortunately, did have to retire early. This is Gary Taylor. Gary Taylor had to retire at 36 due to a career-ending injury. And he actually was also, just kind of as a side, kind of a neat side fact, he was also the only person to win Europe's Strongest Man. By a tie. That was 1991. There was 2 winners that year. 9 times Wales Strongest Man. So Gav Bilton, this is, I guess, the guy you kind of got to have beat. I'm going to put him in the C tier. Gary Taylor, obviously, excellent strongman, but wasn't as prolific as some of the others that are on this list in terms of obviously not just the World's Strongest Man titles, but also other contests as well. Didn't do necessarily a whole lot of other contests relative to the others. So now we're going with someone who I believe started off in bodybuilding, or at least it was in bodybuilding before that. Well, let me back up a little bit. Gary Taylor, again, 1993, and then Magnus Magnuson, 1994, 95, and 96. So 4 times, which again, he's up here. And then the next one is Finland's very own Juko Ahola. Now, Juko Ahola, for those of you who are familiar with him, he is actually the lightest man to win World's Strongest Man. And if you look at him, he does kind of resemble kind of like the Darren Sadler, kind of the pocket rocket sort of thing. Powerful and explosive, but not necessarily the biggest guy on the field. But still, pretty nice, pretty cool to watch, and won a decent amount of contests besides the World's Strongest Man. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in the B tier with the powerhouse guys. Again, since started out in bodybuilding, great physique. which again, most strongmen have, pretty decent physique. You can tell they're strong, but they're mostly big as opposed to muscular definition. So someone who does have a good bit of definition and who podiumed 5 times at World's Strongest Man, and also actually was more also of an arm wrestler, was Sweden's Magnus Samuelsson. So I'm going to put him in the A tier. There's actually one of the things like helped me get into strong. I mean, there were a few things. It wasn't just one big seed. It was a few different seeds. One of them I got interested in Nathan Jones because I saw him in I believe, was it Troy or something? 2004 Brad Pitt. But then he gets defeated by Brad Pitt's Achilles. But then I saw, okay, he also competed in WWE, watched some of that, and he also competed in Strongman. And then I watched the footage where Magnus Samuelsson actually breaks his arm, which is pretty famous because of Nathan employing an unsafe maneuver. So anyway, very strong, and also reputed Magnus Samuelsson to have the strongest arms. Like he actually was one of the strongmen who won who didn't have the biggest legs. Not the strongest legs, but then also you could tell by just looking at the biggest, obviously. Very strong legs, but relatively speaking, So, 1999, Yuko Ahla, Yuko Ahla actually won a second time. So again, we have him up here at the Powerhouse. 1999, he won for a second time. And then after that, we have Yanni Virtanen. So I'll be honest with you, I'm not super familiar with Yanni Virtanen with respect to some of the other newer ones. He's probably one of the most mysterious to me. From Finland as well, interestingly enough. He did podium 2 other times at World's Strongest Man. I'll put him in the B tier. Did a decent number of contests and did win a good number of them, but not any really other big ones besides World's Strongest Man. So I'll put him here, kind of on the edge of maybe putting him a little lower, but did again podium 2 other times and then won a decent number of other contests, just not World's Strongest Man. So that was the year 2000. Now we're approaching the 21st century. We got it. Okay, now we're going to Sven Karlsson. So Sven Karlsson, Viking Power, Norway. He won second 3 times at the Arnold Strongman Classic. So that's pretty good because to be able to do well at multiple heavy contests is going to get you some extra points as well. Again, pretty famous, also good for performance and that stuff. He stuck around in the sport as a commentator as well. We'll put him in the solid B tier. I'm just gonna put Yuko Ahla there since he did win twice. Beat Jamie Reeves a bit. Okay, now my friends, the time you've all been waiting for. Fairly controversial sometimes among strongman fans, in talking about who's the greatest. His name will come up, but then some people shoot him down. Mariusz Pudzianowski. Now, obviously, I did mention earlier what got me into the sport, so there may be a little bit biased talking here. Mariusz Pudzianowski, of course, is 5 times World's Strongest Man winner. He won in the year 2002, 2003, 2005, 2007, and 2008. Now, that being said, that's the most. No one's, equaled that. There are a few 4 times winners, but he's the only 5-time winner. So, obviously based on just that alone, you probably think, oh, maybe you should come into the conversation. But a lot of people kind of downplay him and say, oh, well, he was kind of, he was strong, but he was more kind of, not statically as strong. He was just fast. He didn't play super well at the Arnold's Strongman Classic, for instance, which, is a fair point. Although he always did decently well, what you would consider decently well. Like he would, typically place mid-pack or so up, which, is very strong for, especially the Arnold Strongman Classic. He's not, placing near the last or dead last. Europe's Strongest Man 6 times, which is actually every time he entered. And this is the thing. There's two main things I want to bring up in terms of the discussion about him being, you know, the best. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and put him up here because there's no doubt he's a legend of the sport. If nothing else, for his physique, you know, it's like, wow, okay, he looks like he could do a strongman contest, win, and then step on bodybuilding stage and do well. He was just in that good a shape. Two things I want to bring up about Marius. One, he actually retired very early, right? He retired when he was 32. So he did all this grandiose stuff, you know, the 5 times World Strongest Man and winning, you know, 50 or so contests, international contests, which was a very high ratio as well. He had a, you know, over 50% chance of winning. I think it was closer to like 70, 80%. Again, a lot of these numbers are kind of not set in stone because it's like, oh, well, actually, there's this contest that nobody remembered or took down notes for. But about 70, 80% chance of win rate for first. And yeah, again, he retired by age 32 and then took up MMA. So, you know, he did all this stuff before he was 32. So what if he had kept going? You know, what if he had spent another at least good 8 years, you know, until he was 40 or so, as a strongman? You know, would he have won a title? Maybe a little doubtful because, you know, Zadrunas was coming into his prime, and then of course he had guys like Poundstone or whatever nipping at his heels. And of course Brian Shaw was also about to step into that arena, or stepping into the arena depending on what you're referencing. So, you know, doubtful he may have won, but he may have, who knows, but he probably would have podiumed at least, if nothing else. So, I mean, and then not to mention other, you know, competitions as well. So there's a lot, you know, going on here discussion-wise. There's that, and then two, he was very dominant, and that's one thing that, reason why it's called the Dominator. If you watch the competitions he did, not all of them, of course, but many of them, he dominated. Like, he wouldn't have to do the last event sort of, you know, thing dominate, kind of like Evan Singleton in the recent Giants live show where he didn't have to do the stones. That's uncommon, you know, in the sports, and he did that many times. So those are the two things I would just kind of point out, and kind of throwing in the tidbits in terms of the discussion of who's the greatest, you know, when it comes to the best strongman of all time. Would I put him as the best? No, I wouldn't. I'm going to make that kind of clear when we get to that, man, and it's probably kind of obvious. But still, I don't think he should be taken out of that conversation because of those two, and then all the, on top of the list of accomplishments. Again, really huge legend of the sport, Mariusz Pudzianowski. Yeah, so putting him there. Next one's Vrastil Vrastic. Okay, so I'm going to put him in the B tier. Pretty solid overall. He was the 2004 winner. He was also 6 times Ukraine's strongest man. He's actually currently a politician, I believe. He won not a whole lot outside of the World Strongest Man competitions and then the Ukraine's strongest man. So, you know, he could be one that I could bump down a little bit maybe, but I'll keep him in the powerhouse tier for now, because he did manage to beat, you know, a few good guys in their prime, although he only did win once. So the next one's going to be Phil Pfister. So Phil Pfister is, you know, pretty well known in terms of, if you know Phil Pfister from his, you know, his prediction when he was doing the Hercules hold that he would one day be the world's strongest man who would return it to America, which he did in 2006. He did place 3rd at the 2002 Arnold Strongman Classic, so that's nice. But other than that, he actually, as much as I like Phil and watching him, he actually didn't really win a whole lot. He only won a few competitions outside of this, and that was it. You know, that was it pretty much. So I would actually rank him down here. You know, he has a lot going for him in terms of his strength, but I wouldn't place him at the top of you know, the tiers. So yeah. So there we go. Okay, I was just awestruck and you know, without words, because of the next one we're going to. So I'm just going to cut to the chase. If I were going to say the best strongman, if I had to choose one, this would be it. Big Z. Zydrunas Savickas, the legend of the sports. So Zydrunas Savickas, if you are familiar with strongman in the slightest, this man needs no introduction. He has won first place in over 100 competitions. In fact, let me not waste any more time. Let me just get right up to where the slot where he belongs. 4 times World's Strongest Man winner. So he won in 2009, 2010, 2012, and 2014. 8 times Arnold's Strongest Man. That is something that's not going to be beaten anytime soon. Hathor did just a few days ago announce his return, so maybe he'll have a shot at it, but who knows. 8 times, that's a massive number. 3 times Europe's Strongest Man, 17 times Lithuania's Strongest Man. And the awards just go on and on and on. And he has, you could have his own Wikipedia page just of what he's competed in, and he also was a great powerlifter as well, setting multiple Lithuanian powerlifting records. So huge name of the sport. Obviously known for his massive overhead pressing power. He had the log lift record for the better part of 10 or so years, I think. 10 plus years maybe, but and he kept on raising the bar, just beating himself, his own record. So massive player in the sports. When it comes to the top, to the bests of the bests of when it comes to strongman, if he is not in the top 5, I'm going to be raising my eyebrows and thinking, okay, you're inviting some controversy. So I'm not going to be inviting controversy for this one, I don't think, but, or I should say a whole lot of controversy, but there we go. Speaking of another great, and fresh off a victory, it was the only, although I've been a strongman fan for, about 15 or so years, actually I've only attended one strongman contest, and that was for the first time this year, and that was the Shaw Classic 2023, also known as the Strongest Man on Earth, and it was glorious. Brian Shaw, the big man himself, 6'8", 440 pounds or so, sometimes a little bit more. He said in a recent video, I think he got to like 460 or something, but he never says weight. Big fan, but even not being a big fan, trying to set that aside, that bias. Won the Arnold Strongman Classic also 3 times. He has made a record 15 straight finals at World's Strongest Man, obviously 4 times winner. He won in 2011, 2013, 2015, 2016. So yeah, it's really cemented his legacy. And of course also there's the Shaw Classic, which just started in the year 2020, and it's been going on for a few years now, 4 years. And he's won twice. He won the inaugural competition, and then he won this most recent one. Trey Mitchell won 2021, 2022. And it's known as, especially more recently, as one of the best competitions in terms of not only the production value, but also in terms of actually testing, the mettle of those contestants, and it being a brutal and brutally heavy event. So for this reason, I will put him in the S tier. He really deserves to go high up here. Again, I'm not necessarily parsing him out on the tier. I'm kind of putting him nebulous, whatever. He could be in front of Marius. He could be behind. I'm not. Zydrunas gets his spot, but other than that, it's he's really high up there for me. Especially winning at his age, right? He was 41, I believe, when he won the Shaw Classic 2023. So not only for his power, for his longevity. Now, he may not have the number of competitions some of the other guys do, at least the Europeans, because there's not a huge scene in the Americas relative to number of shows, like the Europes, who has the individual country's strongest man in the Europes. There is sometimes Americas and North Americas, but it's not, again, the scene is not quite the same as it is over there. So Maybe not quite as many number of competitions relative to some of the others, but nonetheless, very impressive resume. So Eddie Hall, Eddie the Beast Hall. So he obviously is known for the 500 kilogram deadlift. Only man to deadlift that much in terms of like a strongman competition setting. Britain and UK strongest man, 11 times between the two. Huge man. I'm gonna put him in up here with the A's. He only won once, and that was in 2017. But again, has done a lot for the sport. He's a popular YouTuber now, but he still has some strength, and I wouldn't be too surprised if he decides to make a comeback. Thor again, half Thor George Bjornsson just announced his comeback. I wouldn't be surprised if he tags along. He did put his body through a lot, but he's one of those hungry guys, and he's recently tried to do other things like boxing and bodybuilding. I'm not so sure he'll do those things, but very statically strong. Axle press, had that record for a minute. Overhead with a log. Static monster. So he could make a comeback, and then he might be bumped up this list, but we'll keep him at Alpha Strongman for now. I think he's a well-deserved spot. Someone who might be bumped up this list. No, this is a guy I did bump up the list. Originally he was A tier, but I decided to push him a little over into this one. Now, again, if this were a little bit more fluidless and I didn't weight the World's Strongest Man wins as much as some other contests, he would be, more obviously higher up here. But he only won once, so he's officially gets the record as being the only guy up there on that list who did not win multiple times. He only won 2018. However, again, there's a lot of controversy about getting faster and whatever, as opposed to getting heavier and other competitions. But impressive, resume as well. He also retired pretty early, same age as Marius in terms of being 32 years old. So despite all his accomplishments, he did retire pretty early. He had a really high win ratio. 3 times Arnold's Strongest Man and winner, and then 5 times Europe's Strongest Man winner. It is thought that into the year around 2018 or so, he might have been the strongest person, the strongest man ever to have existed in terms of the complete package. And I would believe it. He was a massive, very strong human being. Again, there have been a few new contests since he retired. He retired in 2020 at the age of 32, so still relatively young. The sport of strongman, you don't go past your prime, I would say, until your late 30s, early 40s, more obviously, typically. Everyone's a little different, like Mark Felix, Odd Haugen, some of those people. But generally speaking, once you hit your 40s, it's kind of more obvious. So he still has, a good amount left in him potentially if he wants to. And he might be bumped up this list even more if he comes back. So we'll see. But already pretty high up there. Again, I think he kind of tiers on the A to S tier because again he did retire early, so he did a ton with the relatively smaller, shorter span that he did. Martins. Okay, so Martins has had, he kind of had a straight trajectory, and he's kind of had some up and downs in the past few years. Unfortunately, some of them with outside of his control, like the car accidents. However, still a great strongman. He was the 2019 World's Strongest Man winner. He's podiumed in 9 of the most recent contests and did win the 2020 until the 2022 Rogue Invitational. So a force to be reckoned with. I would put him though in the B tier, the powerhouse up here. So very good Arnold Strongman Classic winner as well. I believe 2022 was when he won the Rogue Invitational. So he came back. from the injury and came back with a force, and then all of a sudden he kind of fell off like within about a year and a half really quickly, unfortunately. So he might be coming back. He's kind of recouping. I think I saw him starting to do some heavy lifts, so he can definitely have a lot of opportunity to be bumped up this tier. But you know, good, solid, strong man in terms of like the best of the best. I'm not talking about overall. Like when he's competing, he's obviously going to be one of the dangers to podium, so he's better than the mid pack. But in terms of like as I think of World's Strongest Man winners, he's really solid. So, speaking of warriors, we've got Alexei Novikov, who hails from Ukraine. So, Alexei Novikov is 2020's World's Strongest Man winner. And he is one of those, up until recently, where he keeps going and going and going. He is what I would call like the definition of a powerhouse. Like, he would just do contest after contest after contest, and he will either podium or win. Yeah, he had a long streak there. 2022 Europe Strongest Man, 2022 Rogue champion, so he's actually the incumbent. The Rogue 2023 has not yet taken place. It will in a few weeks here, which I do hope to attend as well. We'll see if he can defend his title. Based on this performance, I think he just needs to heal up. But anyway, I'm going into the commentary. Good powerhouse, keeps going, has one of those that's, again, doesn't really seem like he does a whole lot in the backstage when he's warming up, but then he goes out there and he performs. He just digs deep and gets it done. So I'll put him up in the powerhouse level. So Tom Stoltman. Tom was one of those I actually had lower, and I bumped him up a bit. He's one of those that, he is a two-time winner, though, so you gotta give him credit for that. He's one of those, though, that he doesn't really seem, if he doesn't want to do a tournament, I probably get some flack for this, he doesn't really seem to do as well, but when he wants it, he's a monster. And I got to see him at the Shaw Classic where he won 3 events, maybe 4, I can't remember exactly. He won multiple events, and he did really terribly with the first event, unfortunately. It was so disappointing. But then clawed his way all the way back to 3rd place. Because he didn't give up. Whereas old Tom might have, thrown in the towel a little more quickly. So I would say he earns his spot up here in the B tier. I think he really needs to win some of the bigger shows like the Shaw Classic, the Rogue Invitational, and the Armstrong Classic. Or at least podium, especially. We did podium this year, to really be considered. And I think, again, the podium for this year was really pushed me up there. When he puts his mind to it, he's a monster. It just seems like he's pretty selective in what he does, and some of the shows he goes to, he just doesn't perform super well, relatively speaking. So, putting him in the powerhouse, though. Mitch Hooper's an interesting one. We're in an interesting era right now. So Mitch Hooper is kind of the example where bigger is not necessarily always better. Now, he's obviously very big for a guy, but for a strongman, he's relatively modest size. But if nothing else, his rookie year, first year, was nothing short of incredible. The best rookie year, I would say. Podiumed every single comp. After his 8th place World's Strongest Man debut, and he'd only been doing strongman for maybe 2 or 3 years prior to that. So professionally, I think he only done 1 show or 2 shows maybe prior to World's Strongest Man. I believe it was like the 470 something kilo deadlift that got him into the invite. So very, very interesting. I'm gonna put him up here. He's just so new that he's gonna skyrocket up this list, guaranteed. Unless he just drops off the map, the face of the earth in terms of the strongman scene. He's gonna go up. Massive first year. He's only going to, again, hopefully go up. But great potential. We'll have to see where this goes, because it'll be interesting now that we got Hathor back in the mix. We got the old giant coming back in with Brian Shaw leaving. There's not a lot of the old giants left. I think Coven Giants. Evan Singleton's not quite as big, but he's still kind of on the edge of that kind of strongman giant appeal. Yeah, we got a good battle ahead of us. The the future of strongman is bright, and I'm excited for it. So yeah, this is the ranking. If you have any comments, let me know below. This is something I could talk about for hours and hours on end. Again, I'm kind of going at it a little bit more from a a world's strongest man approach, but there's so many other ways you could look at it with like events, and some guys were just really good at certain events, and they threw in a towel once they got the win, and they didn't do more than they needed to for strategic purposes, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of open-ended questions with potential with a lot of these fellers, with these chaps. So let me know what you think of it. Really enjoyed this, kind of the idea of this video. Really enjoy strongman. Hopefully this is something that you kind of agree with. But again, let me know your thoughts below, and we can have a nice, healthy discussion. It's just my list. It's not a correct list. But yeah, there you go. The World's Strongest Man winners, 24 of them since 1977 all the way to 2023. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.